Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 35th webinar organized by the Botanical Society of Goa in association with the Agricos Alumni Association. I'm Lisa Pinheiro, your host for today's session. So before we begin, I'd like to welcome our session moderator, Sir Miguel Braganza, who is well-known agriculture powerhouse of Goa. He is an agriculture consultant and visiting professor for the students of Dembe College of Arts and Science, Miramar, teaching urban gardening. I also welcome our resource persons, Andrea, Priyanka, and Tanvi, who will share their knowledge on today's topic, that is nutrient deficiencies in plants, cholesterol preparation, and garden maintenance activities. So before we begin this session, I would like to request all of you to turn off your video cameras and mute your microphones to ensure smooth presentation and recording. If you have any queries, you can type it in the chat box or we'll give you a chance to ask your queries at the end of the session. Introducing our first speaker, Ms. Andrea Cheradil. She has completed her BSc degree in agriculture at Don Bosco College of Agriculture, Sulcona. She is a girl with lively personality and a melodious voice. Besides agriculture, she loves reading, playing guitar, and singing. So today she'll be telling us the symptoms of nutrient deficiencies in plants and how to control it. Well, Andrea, a warm welcome and we are excited to hear from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for that introduction. So let's talk about the topic for today, that is nutrient deficiency in plants. So before we move into the symptoms and the solutions, let's just see which elements are essential for our plants. Okay, so now by definition, a mineral element is considered to be essential for the plant's growth and development if the element is involved in plant metabolic functions, and in the absence of this element the plant cannot complete its life cycle. So only under these circumstances are the elements considered essential. So considering these criteria, there are 17 elements that are deemed essential for the plant growth. So the basic elements would be carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and they're easily available to the plants in the form of carbon dioxide and hydrogen. So then the next nutrient will be primary nutrients that fall under the major category. So that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So they are required in a slightly larger quantity. Secondary nutrients, that is calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, they are required in a moderate quantity. And the micro or minor nutrients, that is ferrous, manganese, zinc, copper, boron, chlorine, molybdenum, and nickel, they are required in very small quantity, that is even less than 1 ppm. But still, their absence would create deficiency in the plant and would disrupt the plant processes. So let's talk about our first nutrient, that is nitrogen. So nitrogen is very important for the production of proteins and chlorophyll. So nitrogen is the reason why our plant has green color, because of the chlorophyll. And if there's a deficiency of nitrogen, you can see that there is a chlorosis in the lower leaves. So the lower part of the leaves, the bottom leaves would start turning yellow. That is chlorosis. And then the overall growth rate of the plant would be low. You will observe stunting and even necrosis. That is, the plants would die out. Necrosis means death. So in cases of severe deficiency, it would wilt and it would die. Then now, in order to combat this, we need to provide nitrogen to our plants. So how do we do that? So you can use soil from, you can either plant nitrogen rich plants like beans or peas, leguminous plants. They help in fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere. So that would help in nitrogen intake. So if you you could either grow these plants, or if you have, you can use the soil from in which these plants were grown. So that would help in increasing nitrogen content of the soil. You can also add coffee grounds to the soil. You just don't put them on the soil, let it incorporate it properly into the soil. Then you could also use Gliricidia or sun hemp as green leaf manure. The leaves are rich in nitrogen. If you incorporate it into the soil, with time, as it decays, it will make nitrogen available to the plants. Then you can also use Rhizobium, Azotobacter, or Azospirillum. So these are nitrogen fixing bacteria, biobacteria. So when you incorporate it into the soil, you can also use it as a seed treatment. So it will help fixing nitrogen for the plants. And then, especially in cases of rice, you can use azolla. So that helps in nitrogen fixation. It floats in the water. So I have a picture of Gliricidia just in case you need a reference to how it looks like. And then a picture of Rhizobium on the bottom, and then Azolla. Then our next nutrient would be phosphorus. So phosphorus is also referred to as the energy currency of the plant. So it is very important for root development, flower initiation, and seed and fruit development. And if the plant has enough phosphorus, it is also known to reduce disease incidence. So it helps with the immunity of the plant. So if there is a deficiency, then you can observe stunted growth, then the leaves are green and then the dark green, and then there are purplish to red discoloration as you can see in the pictures. The edges of the leaves have turned purple. So that means there is deficiency in phosphorus. So in order to combat this, we need to add either bone meal to the soil, or you can also add rock phosphate. You can also use water from your fish tank. Just make sure that it's not salty water. If it's fresh water, then it's fine. The droppings from the fish are rich in phosphorus and it will help your plant to grow well. You can also use phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. You can also use VAM. So VAM is vascular arbuscular mycorrhiza. It's another biofertilizer. So it has a symbiotic association with the roots of your plant and it helps to absorb phosphorus from the soil, which would not be available to the plant in other cases. Then you can also use Calicopteris floribunda, which is another green leaf manure. So I have a picture of the plant. So this is the flower, and beside it you have the whole plant, right? And you can see a picture of mycorrhiza and phosphate solubilizing bacteria. Then our next nutrient is potassium. So potassium is important for disease resistant and also helps in maintaining the opening and controlling the closing and opening of the stomata. So if our plant is deficient in potassium, we can observe these symptoms like there is mottling. Mottling is like a patch of yellow chlorotic area in the leaves. So you can see that the edges of the leaves are yellow, have turned yellow, and the leaves are brown or with yellow edges. In the second picture, you can see that the leaves have burned out. So that would be in severe cases, and the mid rib is green. Although the edges are yellow or brown, but the mid rib will always be green. So that is how you spot potassium deficiency. And and in solution to this, you can bury banana peels in the soil. This process will take time, so you just keep on adding it regularly to the soil. It will, because until and unless the peels don't degrade, the potassium will not be made available to the plant. So you can add it on a regular basis in order to just keep it, even prevent it. You can also add wood ash to the soil, but make sure you don't add it in excess because it is known to alter soil pH and also make the soil sticky. And you can also use potassium solubilizing bacteria, so that will help with the potassium intake for the plant. Then next nutrient is magnesium. So magnesium is, in case of deficiency of magnesium, you can say intervenal chlorosis. So the leaf tissue between the veins would be yellow, brown or reddish, but the veins will be green. And in solution to this, you can either add Epsom salt or you can also use VAM because along with phosphorus, it also helps in intake of micronutrients. So magnesium, it will also help in uptake of magnesium. Then calcium. Calcium is very important for the formation of cell wall, and it also helps in seed production when it comes to peanuts. So it is very important. And the symptoms are generally on the younger leaves, that's on the upper leaves. And the leaves will turn brown, as you can see in the first picture. The edges are brown and yellow, and then slowly they will die. And the second picture, you can observe the end of the fruit, that is, the tomatoes have turned brown and have rotted. So the blossom end rot is also another symptom of calcium deficiency. So to combat this, you can apply crushed eggshells. Better to do it when you're planting the tomatoes itself. Afterwards, also you can do it, and then even VAM. So that also helps in uptake of calcium. Then sulfur. Sulfur is also essential for the plant because it helps in seed production, chlorophyll formation, and nodule formation. And nodule formation is very essential in terms of legumes. And The symptoms are kind of similar to nitrogen. The only difference is that it's in the younger leaves. When it comes to nitrogen, it's in the older leaves, that's in the bottom of the plant, and this would be on the upper leaves, younger leaves. So the leaves would be light green to yellow, and in the later stage, the entire plant may turn pale green. And the plants are spindly and small, and the stems turn to become thin. Now, solution could be you can apply fertilizer containing magnesium or Epsom salt. So this increases the availability of sulfur from soil. It makes it available to the plant. And you can also add compost and sulfur solubilizing bacteria. Then zinc. Now I mentioned zinc because Indian soils are generally deficient in zinc. So when in deficiency of zinc, you can observe severe stunting and also interveinal chlorosis in the middle leaves. So you can see in this picture that in the final, in the second stage is less, but in the third leaf, the leaf has completely turned yellow, but the veins are green. So, and the leaves will be small or distorted and with a rosette form. So, in the second picture, you can see that the leaves are all clumped together at the terminal bud. So, that is a deficiency of zinc. And you can also observe premature fruit drop. So, solution could be to add bone meal and increase the calcium content because this also helps with the absorption of zinc. And you can also add a VAM because this helps in the uptake of zinc. Then boron. In cases of deficiency of boron, you can generally see the symptoms in the terminal bud. So there is stunted growth, chlorotic young leaves, and the death of terminal bud. You can see in this picture, in the first picture, that the bud has rotten, so it's dead. Then you can also observe barren nuts in coconut and premature fruit drop. So in order to combat this, you can add boron 50 to 100 grams per year. And you can also add potassium because enough potassium availability helps with boron uptake. So they aid each other. So you can add it in 1 to 2.5 kg per palm per year. Here I have a picture so that we get a clearer understanding of where these symptoms are associated. So you can see nitrogen. Nitrogen is at the lower leaf. You can see the pale yellow color, and the mid leaves are green. Then in terms of phosphorus, also in the lower leaves, in the older leaves, so the leaf is dark green as compared to the others, and you can see a purplish color at the edges. Then in case of potassium, you can see the leaf is pale, the midrib is green, but the edges have turned brown as if they've burned, and then there are folds at the tip. And then magnesium, it's in the middle area, see? So there is paleness, but the midrib is green, and then there is a cup shape at the tip of the leaf. Then, with regards to molybdenum, the leaves are very light. They're very, very pale, and you can observe spots. This is one distinguishing characteristics of molybdenum deficiency. You can also observe sticky secretions from under the leaf. Then, when we talk about zinc, the leaf is small. It's very narrow. The breadth is very less. So it's the leaves become narrow. There are dark spots, and the veins are very exceptionally dark green. Then when we talk about copper, the leaves are pale and it is wilting and already dropping. And with regards to manganese, the leaves are pale in color, and but the veins are dark. And when we talk about iron, again the leaves are pale, but the major veins are green, but there are no spots. In case of molybdenum, there were spots. And when we talk about sulfur, the leaves are light green. Even the veins are pale green, but there are no spot. And these are in the upper portion, in the younger leaves. And lastly, calcium and boron. You see, they are both generally located in the uh, terminal area of the plant. So when there is calcium deficiency, the plants are dark green, the leaves are pale, and then there is drying at the tips. It's not clearly visible in the picture, but it's kind of very pale. So they eventually dry and they die off. And then boron, there is discoloration of the leaf bud and breaking and dropping of buds. Then now I would like to say that these deficiencies are mostly preventive. So if your soil is healthy, then you might not observe these deficiencies. So it's always essential to prevent before it happens. So for that you need to use enough of compost. You have to make sure that your soil is healthy. You can also use biofertilizers as seed treatment. So trichoderma and rhizobium, potassium stabilizing bacteria, BAM, and Pseudomonas fluorescens. So Trichoderma and ramp can use with all the crops. Don't use trichoderma with the bulbs, I'm sorry. You can use, but they are very helpful in helping the plant absorb nutrient and also helps in increasing the immunity of the plant. So it helps in the fight of disease. Pseudomonas fluorescens is also it's used against fungal diseases, but it also helps in absorbing various micronutrients. You can buy these biofertilizers on Flipkart or Amazon, and I think they're available at Goa Bagaita. They're also available at Green Essentials Porvorim and then Green Goa Works in Mapsa. You can also use Panchagavya and vermicompost to enrich your soil. So that would be it. I hope you had an amazing time and learned something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was really very informative, and I'm sure participants will now find it easier to rectify these deficiency symptoms. Thank you so much. Now we have our second speaker, Ms. Tanvi Sulekar. She has also completed her bachelor's degree in agriculture from Don Bosco Sulcona. She is kind-hearted personality and chose agriculture because of her curious nature to know more about plants and soil. She loves experimenting with gardening techniques and composting. So today she'll be telling us how to use coconut fiber to make sticks for houseplants and other uses. Very warm welcome, Tanvi. Over to you. Hello, Tanvi. Please turn on your microphone. You can start. Yes, Tanvi, you can start now.
Hello, thank you, Lisa. Today,
Lisa, I think she has a network problem. You can start with me, then we can follow her.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you turn off her presentation. I'll inform her. Apologies for inconvenience. So we'll move on to the next speaker. She is Mrs. Priyanka Vandeep Naik, well-known agriculture graduate from Goa. She has been featured on Goa 365 and CCR TV for her outstanding work in agriculture at such a young stage. She has been a former teacher for pre-university students, has been guest lecturer for over 40 educational institutions in Goa. She has also presented two research papers at an international conference. She is now a treasurer of Botanical Society of Goa and the president of Agricos Alumni Association. She is currently engaged in providing organic gardening services to people across Goa and is joint manager at Rasraj Farm Mole. Very warm welcome, Priyanka. We are keen to know garden maintenance service activities from you today. Over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about some of the garden maintenance activities that one needs to know when they have a garden or a kitchen garden, and how to maintain their garden to have a better look, and also to have their plants healthier and better. So why we need to maintain our gardens? First of all, we maintain it to have a good aesthetic value. That is, it should look pretty. It should be tidy and neat without any mess. Then once we maintain our garden, then we can have a better growth of the plant. Even the health of the plant can be improved if we continuously look after our plants. Then when we engage in our gardens, then it helps us to get rid of all the pests and disease attack. So there are several activities that one needs to know when how to maintain their garden well without any problems in it. So first of all, the most of the diseases that we see on the germinating seedlings or even on the plants, most of the diseases they occur from soil. So if you know to sterilize your soil, or if you go for soil sterilization, that is basically solarization. Here you can see that solarization is a technique wherein you try to sterilize your soil by covering under a black polythene sheet and keeping it for over a 1 week, and then you go for sowing. So what happens is when you cover the soil with a plastic sheet, it traps the heat inside the soil, and that continuous trapping of heat increases the temperature inside the soil, and that's how you see there are most of the fungal spores or the disease causing organisms which are present in the soil gets killed by the heat of the sun. So that is solarization. So there are two methods of soil sterilization. One can go for a steam method. That is, if you are looking at a small balcony garden or a terrace garden, and you have a small quantity of soil that you want to sterilize it and use for your plants, then you can go for a pressure cooker. So what we have to do is you can use container, aluminum container. In that you can put a foil, and that foil you can put your potting mix which you want to use for your plants, and you can put it into a pressure cooker. So you can cook the keep your soil under pressure for around 180 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. So that will sterilize your soil. And another easy method is you can just close your potting mix into a black color polythene bag and keep it under sun for around 1 week. So that will help your plant to get rid of all the soil causing soil borne diseases. So this is how you can maintain your garden away from pest and disease attack at initial levels by soil sterilization. Second is seed treatment. So what we have to do is if you don't want any diseases to occur in your plant, so you can avoid some diseases by using trichoderma, which fight against the disease causing organisms in the soil. So you can go for seed treatment, or you can even go for soil drenching with trichoderma powder. Then seed sowing. Here in seed sowing, most of us have problem when we go for a direct sowing. That is, sometimes what happens is the ants come and take away our seeds, or they feed onto the seeds, and we do not find our seedlings coming up from the seeds. So most of the times we prefer that we go for a seed trays wherein we can look for our plants and we can transplant them healthy directly into the main field. Or you can even use a paper cup wherein you use a growing media of 2 is to 1 is to proportion. That is 2 parts of soil, 1 part of coco peat with 1 part of manure, that is your vermicompost or compost. So with this mixture you can put into your trays, and you will see the seedlings will be much more healthier as compared to the soil, because in soil most of the nutrients, when especially in the rainy season, what happens is because of the heavy rain sometimes the seedlings do not cope up very well. So if you go for a seed growing your seedlings in pro trays like this, you will have a better seedling, and you can procure them from the trays and directly transplant in the main field. So that will help you to conserve your time then when you go to sow in the main field, because sometimes what happens, certain seeds are not viable and they do not germinate. So again you have to do the gap filling, that is again you have to sow the seeds and that consumes your time. So we can go for a seed tray wherein you have a mature seedling which is at least 3 to 4 leaf stage and you're going to transplant it to the main field. Next is prickling. Now, what is prickling is, if you are going for a growing of seedling in a seed trays. So sometimes what happens is we try to put the seeds more than 2 or 3 seeds in one spot. So what happens? There is crowding of the seedling. So when there is overcrowding, then the plant roots are not able to thrive well. They don't get enough of air to thrive into the soil, and that's how we need to separate them. That is, if they are crowded in one place, then we need to separate them into make them single in the separate tray, or you can use a uh, paper cups in wherein you are going to separate your seedlings for further growth. Next is transplanting. Now most of the people they face problem during transplanting because don't do it at the right time. So what is the right time to do transplanting of your nursery seedlings? So once you see your seedlings at 3 to 4 leaf stage, that is almost after 20 days of putting the seed for germination, and mostly have to transplant the seeds in evening time, because if you are going to transplant in the daytime, what happens is, because of the heat, the seedlings feel the heat shock from the soil. So to avoid that shock, we need to transplant the seedling in the evening time so that the seedlings do not get heat shock or the transplanting shock. Another important practice that one needs to do is shading. So this is done mostly in summer season when the sun is too hot and the temperature is also rising when the temperature is also rising, and because sometimes what happens is, if there is too hot sun and you are growing some vegetables which are very delicate, like lettuce or cabbage or broccoli, and they are under direct sun, especially in Goa when summer it's very hot, and if you have vegetables like lettuce and all, then it will get scorching. So to avoid that, we need to do shading. So you can use coconut fronds, the coconut leaf, the top part, and wherever you have a seedling, you can just put that front, or you can use a cardboard paper, as you can see in the first picture, or you can use shade net over the seedling, or you can do a small matter of coconut leaves. So shading is important if you are going to transplant the seedling in hot sunny days. Then staking is also an important practice, especially for the plants which are bearing fruits like tomatoes, brinjals, which becomes heavy once they bear fruits. And for such kind of plants, we need to do staking. So when we do staking, it is also important to tie the knot properly. That is, we need to tie the make the knot tight at the stick, and it should be loose at the plant. Wherever you are making the knot to the plant, it has to be loose, because we should not tie the plant very tight. Then it restricts the plant growth, and also it hampers the plant. So you can see in the picture, which is in the corner, or the knot which is made, it has to be in a eight shape. That is, the knot which you are going to tie to the stake and the plant, it has to be eight in shape. That is, you can see the rope is going cross over the stake, and it is going in a eight shape, and it is going loose to the plant. So it has to be loose over here and tight over here, so that the plant is not getting congested by the rope. So this is the way how you have to stake your plant, or tie the knot to the plant when you are staking. Then you need to make trellis for the plants which are creeping, like ridge gourds, then your sponge gourd. For such kind of plants, you need to make trellis. And if you are living in apartments or balconies, then you can make a pod with this kind of trellis. Next is watering and manuring. Watering is also an important practice, wherein you don't have to water your plants too many times, or have to maintain the water level in the soil. That is, it shouldn't be too much moisture, and there shouldn't be too much of dryness in the soil also, because if there is too much of dryness, then the finer rootlets which are there in the soil, because of the soil starts cracking, the roots also starts cracking along with the soil. So we have to maintain that moisture content. And another important factor is the method of irrigation. That is, if you are going to use a hose pipe with high pressure, that also damages your plant and the plant gets disturbed. So you have to use a rose can which is going to drop the water slowly to the root zone of the plant. And while watering, you have to make sure that you are not watering from the top portion of the plant, especially those plants which are flowering or which has a bud. Because if you are watering at the top from the tip of the plant, then there are chances of it to get rotten. So you have to make sure that you are watering at the root zone and not on the top portion of the plant. And also there is not high pressure for the plant so that it does not damage or disturb the plant growth. And another important thing is we should not water the plant like anything, because the water which is required by the plant is very minute quantity. So if we can use a self irrigating pot which can take the which, through which the plant can take the water, how much quantity it requires. So this is also a good option for those who are like not knowing how much to water their plant. Then they can look for these options. Or if you don't want to water your plant when they are in field, during especially during in summer season, then what you can do is you can make a drippers. That is, you can take a 2 liter bottle, and for the cap you can make a one hole. And wherever we have plants, especially uh, if you have a big plants like brinjals and you're not there at your home, then what you can do is you can make a hole at your at the top of the cap, and you can put that bottle inverted so that the hole will only release that minute amount of water as a plant requires. So you can make a hole at the on in the ground, and you can put that 2 liter bottle inverted. That is the hole which you have made on the cap is going into the ground, and the bottle is inverted. So you can make a minute hole at the bottom of the bottle. That is, when it is going inverted, that the hole which you make at the top should allow it to take in the air, and that suction should make it possible for the plants to absorb the water. So it works on the same principle like how we put salines for the patients through uh, through syringe. The same principle works here if you don't want to water your plants regularly during, especially during summer season. So that technique you can use. And manuring has to be done optimum. That is, you shouldn't manure plants too much, and it has to be optimum. That is, once in a month or once in 15 days if you are totally going for organic cultivation. Then once in 15 days or 20 days you can add your compost or any organic liquids for your plants. Then another important practice that one can follow for their better growth of the plant is pinching. So this pinching is like removing of the younger shoots of the plant. So especially in marigolds or in your tomatoes, if you want your plant to grow, want to become if you want your plant to become more branchy or it should have more branches, then you can just remove the tip of the plant, that is the younger shoot. You can see in the first picture, just remove the two younger leaves, and you will see there are lateral branches that will start growing. So that will make your plant let more bushier, and it will also give you more flowers. So because there will be more branches that will start appearing. Another second is disbudding. So what is disbudding is, suppose in case if you are going for a floriculture cultivation, that is, if you are going for a cultivation of chrysanthemum, or if you are going for a cultivation of roses, then or any other vegetable crops also, wherein you find there is a lot of flowers or buds which have come at one place itself, and you want a flower or a fruit which should be bigger in size and should look good. Then what we have to do is we have to discard some of the small growing buds which are too close to the middle center bud. So that is disbudding. That is, you discard the abnormal or weak buds and you try to boost only one bud to have a good size of the fruit and also good size of the flower. So that is disbudding. When you want a bigger size fruit or a bigger size flower, you have to discard some of the buds or the on the branch, so that you have a good amount of nutrients which are flowing into this bud and it will grow into a bigger size flower. So that is disbudding. Then defoliation. This is mostly done in tendies or in long beans to have a good fruit formation. So what happens is when you do defoliation, that is, if you remove the excess of foliage from the plant, it will boost more number of flowers into your plant. So if your plant is becoming more greener, that is, there are more many foliage is coming, and you are not going to defoliate it, then the plant produces less number of flowers because most of the nutrients will go to the leaves, and the leaves will absorb all the nutrients and it won't able to produce flowers. It will just start growing into a big vine. So to reduce that, yeah, to get more number of fruit and more flowers, you can do defoliation. That is, you can just reduce the number of leaves on your plant. So you can see in this picture there is so many leaves, but in this picture we have reduced it so we can get good harvest. Next is mulching. So mulching is basically done to avoid the weed infestation. So we don't want any weeds which is coming in between a crop. So to avoid that, we cover the soil with uh, a substrate. It can be paddy straw, it can be your dry leaves, or you can even use a plastic mulch. So that is mulching when we cover the soil with a layer of substances like organic substitutes or a plastic mulch to avoid the weeds to pop up from the ground. And it also helps the soil to keep moisture and also the beneficial microbes which are working in the soil to provide all the nutrients to the plant are also active when they are covered in under the surface because they are not under direct exposure to sunlight, and that's how they thrive well when you do mulching. The next is trimming and pruning. So most of the time what happens is when we grow chilies or brinjals or tomatoes, once the one harvest is over, we feel the plant is becoming very weak and it is not giving us any more fruit or flowers. So what we think is the plant has finished its growth and it is about to die. So most of the time what we can do is we can just go for trimming. That is, you can just trim the leaves or trim the few branches and cut short the plant. So that will encourage the new growth of the plant, and you can manure it. Of course, you need to manure the plant when you are going to trim it, and that boosts the plant to produce new branches and new flowers on the plant. So you have again the plant which is coming up will give you more number of fruits and it will be as a new plant. So that is what is pruning. And next is trimming. Trimming is you give a particular shape to your plant and basically to have a good sunlight which is occurring into the plant surface. So most of the times what happens is if there are many branches which are going crisscross on the tree, then the sunlight interference to the plant reduces. That is, the plant is not going to get enough of sunlight for its growth. So in that case, what we do is we go for trimming. That is, we remove the branches which are crisscrossing over each other. That is, and we make a open center. That is, we provide enough of space in the center so that the sunlight is available for all the parts of the plant. So that is trimming. And especially if you have a lawn, then you need to trim your lawn at least twice a year. So that helps your lawn to be at lower height and it also maintains the lawn green lush color, and it really looks better if you trim it. The next is repotting. So most of the time we feel that after some years the potted plant is too dull or it's not growing, it's not giving us flowers. So it may be because of the root bound condition that has occurred in the pot. So there are various points that you need to look if your plant has become root bound. That is, first your plant growth will be very slow. Second, the soil which is there in the pot will dry very fast. That once you water it, it will dry very fast because there are many roots that have come into the pot and they are going to suck the water quickly. So that's how your soil will become dry very fast. So that is another indication that you need to repot your plant. And next is you will see the roots which are growing excessively in the pot will come out from the hole, that the drainage hole. From that drainage hole, the lots of the roots will come out, and you that's the indication that you need to repot your plant. So what are the things you need to know when you are repotting your plant? First of all, when you're going to repot your plant, you have to make sure that you water your pot. That is, before repotting your plant, one day prior, 12 hours prior, you have to water your plant thoroughly so that the entire soil gets moist. And once you're going to remove the plant from the pot, you have to insert the two fingers of your hand. As you can see in the second picture, you have to keep one hand on the top part of the pot and the other should go to the bottom part. So you have to tilt it slightly. The pot should be tilted slightly, and you have to tap the bottom part and the side of the pot slightly so that the entire soil which is there attached to the pot gets loosened from the side. And if it's too tight, if the soil has become too compact, then you can use a sharp long knife and run it around the pot. Once it's in the old pot, you can just run the knife around the pot and make sure that it has separated from the older pot. So once you remove your plant from the old pot which you have planted, you need to trim the excess of roots. The older roots has to be removed. And even if there are more of number of plants which have come up and there are more rootlets which are there, or more suckers have uh, uh, grown in one single pot, then you can just remove some, and you have to prepare a new potting mix, or you can use the same potting mix along with the addition of manure. So, and at this time when you're repotting it, you have to make sure that you are using a pot which is much more bigger in size than the earlier pot. So here you can see in the last picture, the first pot is much smaller, then the second pot is much bigger than the first pot. So that helps your plant, which has produced enough of roots to have enough space for their growth, and that is air circulation for the plant growth, which is very important. If you want to have your plant looking healthy and have a good growth, then your pot size has to be optimum and it should have good aeration which is going into the root system. So that is important when you're looking at potting. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, for letting us know the different gardening activities. I'm sure participants were not aware of some of these, and you really provided a good information. Thank you so much. We'll resume with the second speaker. Tanvi, are you ready?
Yes, Lisa, I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, you can take over now.
Good evening, everyone. Presentation, who is presenting? My presentation. Good evening, everyone. Today I will be telling you about the techniques of coir stick preparation. Next slide, please. There are different types of coir sticks: coir root stick, coconut acidic coir stick, and moss stick, areca nut husk stick. Next slide, please. First, we will know what is coir. So, what is coir? Is the fibrous material found between the hard internal shell and the outer coat of a coconut. In Konkani, we call it as sorna. Next slide, please. These are the three types of coir. First is coir fiber, which is used to prepare fiber, that is rajo or something, doormat, flow mat, something that is coir fiber. Coir chips are used in the process of potting, and coir peat is used in seedling trays. Next slide, please. Features and benefits of coir. Coir is used as a soilless fluid medium, mostly used in seedling trays as well as indoor plants. Coir has high available water holding capacity. It is also used as mulching material, and they are also used in the preparation of climbing poles. When we grow the creepers or climbers in the container, in that we use. Next slide, please. First is the coconut coir stick preparation. Materials required are coir, scissor, coir dough, and bamboo stick. Next slide, please. First step, take some pieces of coir and tie to the bamboo stick with the help of a rope. Next slide, please. Repeat the previous step and tie along the length of the bamboo stick. Cover the stick with coir, leaving little space at the bottom end so that the salt remains at the bottom. Next slide, please. Now the coir stick is ready to use. Next slide, please. The usage of coconut coir stick. It is environmental friendly and biodegradable. These are used for small climbers and as a support for small flowering plants. The high moisture retention capacity of the stick enables the roots of the plant to grip natural organic matter of the coir fiber. These are extensively used in nurseries, horticulture and greenhouse farming, and indoor as well as outdoor horticulture practices. Next slide, please. This is the picture that is coir stick is used in polyhouse or greenhouse. Next. Second one is coir dough stick preparation. Procedure is same as coir stick preparation, but the difference is that instead of coir, we use coir dough, that is ragu. This is the picture of coir dough stick. Next. Third one is the moss stick preparation. Soak the sphagnum moss in water. Bend the hardware mesh into a cylinder. Cut the hardware mesh. Form the hardware mesh into an open cylinder. Fill the cylinder with pre-moisturized sphagnum moss. Stitch up the cylinder with plastic coated wire twist. This is the picture of sphagnum moss. This is the picture of a moss stick. Next slide. Last one is areca nut husk stick preparation. Bend the hardware mesh into a cylinder. Cut the hardware mesh. Form the hardware mesh into an open cylinder. Fill the cylinder with areca nut husk. Stitch up the cylinder with plastic coated wire twist. Next slide, please. The first picture shows the differentiated byproducts of areca nut, and the second picture is of areca nut husk. Next slide, please. Areca nut is an agricultural waste which does not contribute to the economy of areca nut plantation, but in industries it is used with alkali treatment process by using 6% of sodium hydroxide solution to prepare low cost. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanvi, for letting us know how to use coconut and areca nut fibers. It was really helpful. Now, participants, if you have any queries, you can either type it in the chat box or turn on your microphones and ask your questions to the speakers.
Lisa, I think you can close up.
There are two questions. Uh, a step-by-step of way of doing moss stick would be great. It is same as using coir, coconut coir or arecanut coir. It's just that you need to remove a layer of moss and put it across the stick and then tie it with a thread. It's same. And there's another question: how to get rid of slugs and snails on terrace? You can dust common salt on slugs and snails. They get dehydrated because of sodium content in the salt. Also, you can install beer traps. You can keep a bowl of stale beer. Snails and slugs are attracted to beer smell, and then the next day you'll see snails and slugs getting drowned in beer, and then you can remove them and throw them away. So this is one remedy which you can do. And other thing is you can put crushed eggshells in your pots. Because of sharp edges, snails and slugs will not attack your plants. Yeah, these two are two helpful remedies for snails and slugs. Any more queries?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Lisa,
you're welcome.
I have a question which is not of this today's session, but I needed to know from you also, Miguel. I have one breadfruit tree the fruit has retained now after 25 years. That is, the monkeys have still kept the fruit, but as the fruit is small, but they drop with the stem becoming yellowish in color and they drop. What do I do for it?
So Miguel, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, in case of breadfruit, very important is the potash nutrition. Make sure that your tree is manured. If right now you have no fruit on the tree, 2% spray of potash fertilizer will be good. That's 20 grams of potash in a liter of water. If you can spray on the leaves closer to the fruit, that should help to retain it.
20 grams of potash. I will get that at Bagaidar or any.
No, you have to buy a kilo of potash and use a spoonful level. That's about 20 grams.
Okay.
1 tablespoonful level.
Okay. And
in 1 liter of water.
And then spray it on the leaves close to the fruit.
Yes.
Okay. And then
you have only one fruit on the tree, you said, no?
No, I have around 7-8 fruit. But then I noticed that almost in a week's time, one fruit is dropping.
The stalk is turning yellow, you said.
Yes, and it's not the monkeys throwing down. So the monkeys would have taken the fruit and gone.
Yes.
It's
falling down, but you're getting the falling fruit.
It's falling down, yeah. The remaining potash, when we do this for the coconut trees in the month of July, August, and July, August, when we...
You can use it there, yes.
We can put it in the mud?
You can put it there, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Because each coconut tree will take about 1 kilo to 1.5 kilo of potash. Here you require only 1 spoonful from there.
Okay.
Per coconut tree, 1.5 kilo in a year.
Yeah.
1.5 kilo in a year. If you are watering it, you can split it into 3 doses. Half kilo in August, half kilo in October, and half kilo in February.
Okay, so
because potash is completely water soluble, it will go with the water. As you water it, it will disappear down into the soil beyond the reach of the coconut roots.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
There's another question by Mr. Praveen Bhatt. My arecanuts fall when they are small. What should be done? Now, this could be due to various reasons. One is because of changes in environmental condition. There's too much of water these days, and suddenly there's bright sunshine. So it could be an environmental factor, Or check if your areca nut is coated with grey color mold. If that is the case, then it is affected by Choleraga, which results in premature nut fall. And if there's grey color mold on your areca nuts, then you need to spray Bavistin to control this fungal disease. Yeah. Okay, since there are no more questions, I would like to end this webinar. It was indeed a wonderful session. I would like to thank the Botanical Society of Goa and the members of Agricos Alumni Association for organizing free sessions related to agriculture every weekend at 4 p.m. I would also like to thank Sir Miguel Braganza for always bringing out the best in us and for guiding us to promote organic agriculture in Goa. And finally, thank you, my dear participants, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you all. Goodbye, stay safe, take care.